Hey folks, we are live for the dose time today. If you missed it earlier today at 11 o'clock, I did a live stream that was about working with epoxy for bowls. So it was primarily about the mechanics of turning an epoxy bowl, but there's background stuff about what to use for a form when you pour the epoxy bowl, and pressure pot, no pressure pot versus vacuum chamber when you do those kind of castings. So in any case, if you've missed that, it's WWGOA.com. We've got a whole list of live streams. It's also on YouTube. It's also on Facebook. There are a lot of places you can catch that bowl turning thing from this morning. As always, I want to thank Tight Bond for sponsoring this event and keeping it free for you, and point out that if you scroll down just a little bit, one of the things a lot of articles have come through my hands over the years. And not to say that I've written all those articles, but I'm working with the editors who are writing. I'm directing what direction they should go. So one of the things we started many, many months ago, Gary Coyne is the author, is this really comprehensive Understanding Wood, all about wood guide. And it's a very long PDF. If I remember right, it's 55 pages in total. And Gary did such a good job. And I really directed him to dot the I's, cross the T's, make this comprehensive. So one-stop shopping, you could learn about different wood species and their working characteristics, lumber grading, and what's the difference between first and second, select and better, number one common. And there's a lot. So all that information is in this packet. All that information is in this PDF. And on the page where you're watching, if you scroll down a little bit, there's a banner. And it's, I might be getting the title wrong, but it's something like Ultimate Guide to Wood or something like that. And I would encourage you to click on that, read that, go over it. It is a really, really good document. Gary did a great job on that, and it was really worth the time and effort and, of course, cost that he earned, the money he earned putting it together, because it's a really, really good comprehensive document. And then the other thing I'll point out, and then I'm going to look at questions, is if you're somewhere in this area, I'm in Western Wisconsin, if you're in Minnesota, if you're in South Dakota, a week from today, I will be arriving in scenic Sioux Falls, South Dakota. All day Friday and all day Saturday, I'm teaching at the Stan Houston Equipment Store in Sioux Falls. Max and I were just talking about it. This has been an ongoing event for me for, I think this is year 16, maybe 17 that I've been going to this. So I'm doing two sessions. One is about bandsaw setup and resawing on the bandsaw. The other is about what it takes to put together an end grain cutting board, tips and tricks for that. So I'll do that. I'll do each of those sessions on Friday, and then I'll do each of those sessions on Saturday. So if you've got questions about it, contact the store, Stan Houston Equipment, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. There's no sign up. It's an open format. It's lots going on in the store. In addition to me teaching, there'll be a lot of vendors there. Usually all the usual suspects are represented. Craig Jig, Saw Stop, portable power tool vendors. So this is a really big event at the Sioux Falls, South Dakota store. So if you have the opportunity to get there, that'd be cool. And maybe I'll see you there. Okay. Got to move slower, so I put my password in right. Here we go. John says, several years ago, I had the fortune to receive a truckload of various wood species of rough cut lumber from the misfortunes of a friend. 10 years have passed, and I am wanting to build a white oak cabinet for my daughter. But most of the board has bowed, some with twist, mostly bowed. Is there a way I can successfully straighten this wood and not have to purchase all new material, or is it just firewood? These are in sizes from 2 by 8 by 10 to 2 by 10 by 12. Thanks. So you can these questions about wood and how it reacts are always, these are great questions. And the question of what can I do to straighten it is, can we get the bow and the twist out of it? Yes, but it's not by trying to like put it in a platen and flatten the wood. You would do this by going through the process of flattening and squaring a board. We have a video on this. We also have I think an article on this, and it's the steps in ending up with a 6 square board, because it's 6, 2 faces, 2 edges, 2 ends. So in broad brush strokes, and actually the next question is from Joe, and it's similar. He's asking about taking a twist out of a board, and I'll come back to his question as well. In broad brush strokes, what you're going to do is flatten one face on a jointer, face jointing. When that face is flat, you plane the other face. That makes those 2 faces parallel. Then you joint one edge. That makes that edge straight and perpendicular to the faces. Then you go to a table saw, you rip the second edge. That makes it parallel to the first edge. You joint the ripped edge. So now you have 4 square. Then you cross cut an end, cross cut an end. The good news is, if you're starting with 2-inch stock, my guess would be you've got enough thickness there. If it's a real severe twist, if it's a real severe bow, you're going to lose a lot of material to get this flat. But if you're starting with 2, you've got some wiggle room there. A good tip on this is, well, you said you want to build a cabinet. So starting with 10-foot stock, the first thing I would do is rough cut it so each piece is 2 inches longer than what you need for your project. And if we take a thingy, let me get my dry erase stuff. If you've got a board that's got any kind of an issue to it, a bow or a twist. So this, and if that's 10 feet long, let me look at the glare. There we go. If that's 10 feet long and you face joint it, you're going to have to take like this much material off to get it flat. If first you cut it to the approximate size you need, you're going to significantly reduce the amount of material you got to take off to get one flat face. So as a first step, plan your project. And then as a second step, start cross-cutting that stuff down to where, like I said, it's a couple inches longer than what you need for the project. And then that sequence: jointer, planer, jointer, table saw, cross-cut, and then you'll be truing them up. All right, so Joe says, take the twist out. I don't have a planer or any other flattening machinery. How could I take the twist out of a board? Hand plane. And this is, I mean, people did this forever back in the day. I am not a good hand tool guy, but people did what we're talking about here with hand planes forever. I did teach hand tool joinery for Peace Corps in Africa for about 2 years. And the kids, we had no electricity in that shop. So at that school, we did everything with hand tools, including, we started with rough sawn lumber, and it all got plane to thickness, you know, hand plane 2 faces, rip saw to cut it to width, hand to joint, you know, joint with jointing the edges is to also experiment with an electric plane. And with an electric plane, I think getting everything dead flat can be a little bit dicey, but it could be a good starting point because it's going to take material off a lot more easily and a lot faster than a hand plane will. So hand tools and get an electric handheld plane. Either of those could be a good approach. Mike says, Spike Carlson did a video entitled How to Make a Straight Line Jig from a Plywood Sheet. He used the factory edge from the sheet as a guide for the circ saw. Under the impression you can't always trust the factory edge to be straight and square, true or false, please clarify. So yeah, it depends. If I'm building cabinets, when I'm working on the carcasses out of any kind of sheet stock, one of my missions is to eliminate all the factory edges. I don't want to glue a face frame to a factory edge. Given the opportunity to remove the factory edge, do it. I think, and I'd have to go back and look at the video and the manner in which Spike did this, but I think part of the premise with this was when you don't have other equipment, then the factory edge maybe is as good as you can get for what you've got to work with. So if you can further refine it, if you can use a straight line jig and straighten that edge, if you can, whatever your approach is, do that. But if all you've got is a steel stud as a straight edge, if all you've got is a factory edge as a straight edge, then that's better than some kerflooey piece of solid wood that's really, really crooked and you can't get a straight edge out of. So perfect scenario, you want to further refine it. But again, if all you've got is a factory edge, it's better than nothing. It's better than trying to do a freehand cut. Richard says, I've had a hard time finding compatible fittings for various types of dust collection from the Dust Deputy canister and the regular vacuum hoses that are part of my shop vac system. And then ... But then further down, he says, do you recall a visual drawing of the various sizes of common ducting? Seems like it was an irrelevant size chart at the end of a set of plans. Oh, so maybe those two questions aren't related. So if we go back to the first one, finding compatible fittings for various types of dust collection from the Dust Deputy. So I can show you what I use. I'm assuming that coming off of a shop vac or a Dust Deputy, you're trying to connect to portable power tools. So I'm up against a little bit of a issue because my friend Charlie is using some of my portable power tools and the hose I was going to show you. But Rockler makes a couple different products. So it's something like, if you go to the Rockler site and you look up universal dust collection, universal fittings, universal, the key word in there is universal. They've got one hose like this, into which one can screw. So I'm taking this one out. And then you can put, I don't have it here, you can put a different one in. So look at the size of the end of that. There's a smaller one, and then I think one more smaller one. Alternatively, so what I like about this is this end is 2 inches. That's going to go into a shop vacuum. This end is removable, and you're going to put an adapter on that fits whatever it is you're working with. What I don't like about this particular hose is it's short, but it extends a lot, but there's a lot of pullback. So for me, I found this a little bit awkward to use in that, like, my vac is here, I'm working over the bench, and the, I don't know, spring tension on this is kind of always pulling it back this way. they came up with another product, not because of me, but just other people probably said the same thing, which is simply, I think, an 8-foot long hose that's more like a conventional shop vacuum hose. It doesn't have this slinky effect. So once you're out using it, it just lays there. These ends are from that. And this will give you an idea of large for some tools, middle for other tools, and then really little. You can either use that slipped over a small fitting, or see how it's barbed? You can push it into a fitting. So these unscrew off the end of that big blue hose, and then you just put on whatever adapter is appropriate for the tool that you're using. And I have found with these, like, I don't think there's a tool in my shop that one of these doesn't go on to. Again, portable power tools is what we're talking about there. So I have found that to be that product to be a really good problem solver for dust collection on portable power tools. The other question, now I got to look at it again. A visual drawing of various sizes of common ducting. Seems like it was an irrelevant size chart at the end of a set of plans. I don't know what that would be about. Like, and I'm not really sure what you're looking for there as far as size of ducting. There's a lot of dynamics involved with sizing ductwork for your dust collector. CFM of the dust collector, how long your run is, what you're connecting to. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So I don't know. Off the top of my head, we've got an article Paul Mayer did called Dog Simple, like dog the animal, Dog Simple Dust Collection. Maybe that'll help you. But I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure too what you're looking for there. Okay, got to go up a little bit. There we go. Robert says, I am in the market for a benchtop drill press. What important characteristics should I look for? Yes, I don't know. It should spin round and round. I'm not trying to be flippant here, but I haven't. My problem with answering questions like this is I haven't looked at drill presses as a category. I haven't looked at benchtop drill presses as a category. So I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would say one wants to know the length of this. In other words, how far the quill goes up and down, speed range, ease of changing speeds, because you do need to change speeds. Larger bits, Forstner bits, got to run slower than small bits. Maybe a light, size of the table. You know, for woodworking, bigger is better. So size of the table, or consider adding another table afterward. But yeah, I haven't looked at drill presses comprehensively to say this is what makes a really good drill press. You know, and two, that's a boring topic. Get it? See what I did there? So yeah, I don't know. But here's what I would do. Here's my recommendation. Wood Magazine, and Wood Magazine is often my go-to on these kind of questions. Wood Magazine is a magazine that still does tool tests. And I would Google drill press tool tests in general, and then you could further refine that by Googling benchtop drill press tool test and see if there's something out there that would help you on this. And the benefit to that is they'll have looked at a number of different models, and they'll be able to isolate. The article typically will isolate features that say, "Good, this is a good thing. This is a frivolous feature. This is a great must-have feature." That would be a great approach. Is see if you can find something like that. Paul asks, can you recommend a workbench height for a man in a wheelchair? Also, how high should the surface of the table saw be? But I don't know. But I feel like this is a nut that's been cracked already by somebody. There are, I would think, people in wheelchairs doing woodworking, carving, metalwork stuff, working with their hands, who could then speak to this question. I mean, at gut reaction, it would be like, when you're in a wheelchair at a table eating, is that a comfortable height at which to work? And then that kind of helps answer that question. For the table saw, I don't know, because that's way tougher. Because with a table saw, you need to be in a position where you can finish the cut and get the wood, get the material past the blade. So that height, that parameter is going to control kind of where the table saw has to be so that it can be safe to use, but you can also be in a position where you can safely make those cuts and complete the cuts, do the work that you need to do. So I would, I think you got to cast a wider net for this than me, because I have zero experience with this. But like I said, I'm guessing somebody has cracked this nut already, and there are possibly shops where people in wheelchairs are doing woodworking, working with their hands. And somebody would be able to answer that question way better than me. I have a piece of antique furniture I am repairing for someone. It needs to be disassembled for the repairs. Someone had previously attempted to glue it with yellow carpenter's glue. How do you recommend trying to separate those joints? So first qualifier, I am by no means a furniture repair person. I turn down that kind of work all the time because I know nothing about it. So my very unqualified answer is, I think, I'm not positive, I think that typical yellow wood glue will soften, I don't know about dissolve, under heat and steam. That introduces the interesting question of, if I've got an antique and I'm introducing heat and steam to dissolve the joints, what is that doing to the furniture? I don't know. So I'm going to say again, I am not an antique repair person. I mean, I'm an antique, but I'm not a repair person who works on antiques. So this is something, I bet there's a forum online someplace where people are talking about this kind of stuff, and you could post that question and probably get a way more qualified answer than you're getting from me. I just hate, there are certain areas where I get uber nervous about leading somebody down the wrong path. Finishing is one. If you watch this, you've heard me say 11 billion times, I don't know, and I don't want to screw up your project on a finishing question. And this is another one. Furniture refinishing is, there's a lot going on there. And same deal. I don't want to be the one who then takes a chance of messing up Aunt Millie's antique Singer sewing machine or something. Scott says, I use Titebond glue, the middle size bottle. Any recommendations to keep the tip from not allowing glue to dry in the tip? Seems like glue dries in the tip, and I have to use pliers to break the old glue. Yeah, here's what I am most guilty of. And I think if we use the bottles the way they're supposed to, I think we would be okay. So generally what I end up doing is I spread glue, and then I set this down, and I'm done. I'm done with this. So when I walk away and I'm doing the next frenetic thing in my life, I forget to close the bottle. I think if one were to actually close this every time one used it, then I would be soaking these tips in water once a week to get the dried glue out of them. So part of the solution with yellow glue, kind of like we just talked about, it is water soluble. So if I really get stuck, where literally stuck, and there's a big goober of glue in there, then I take the tip off, and I've got yogurt cups everywhere from when I eat yogurt. Put a little hot water in there, put the tips in, let them soak, come back the next day, and then they'll be very easy to clean because that's going to soften the glue. I'm trying to be better about remembering to snap that lid closed. And I think like I said, I think if we do that, the premise is that once you've closed it, then when you open it, it's gonna flow like it's supposed to. But I obviously do not have a good solution for it because I also have glue. I'm pointing to my glue rack. I have glue stuck in the tips of my bottles on a pretty routine basis. Dennis says, I need to refinish a cherry dining table. Do you cover how to do that? No, sir. So this is another like antique repair and refinishing are not my thing. I know nothing about, whatever, stripping the old finish off, dealing with the old finish or anything like that. So just not a category of content that we cover. Where would you direct someone, Jim asks, to better understand how wood is sourced and milled? Nathan Elliott from Out of the Woods as an example. I don't really know what that means. Where would you direct someone to better understand how wood is sourced and milled? Like, if the question is, do you want to know, do you want a better understanding of logs to lumber? Then we've got logs to lumber videos. So I know I've got one, has a lot of views. That's me running a Logosol sawmill. And we talk about, I think that's about plane sawn, how to cut plane sawn wood. So that's an example of a log being cut. We've also got videos about wood being air dried. Dave McKintrick did an article for us about a solar kiln that he's got. So that's about it being kiln dried. So if that's what you're looking for, we've got content like that on the site. I don't understand the reference to Nathan Elliott. So if you're, Jim, if you're watching, feed in a little more information on another question. And if I get to it, I'll try to drill down further, but I don't really understand what you're looking for. Jerome says, jointers are expensive. True. I've done it with a planer by gluing the rough board down to a very plate piece, maybe means very flat piece of plywood, and splitting or balancing the twist to minimize the loss of material. Once one side is flat, then I will follow the process. Yeah, so it's so what he's describing there is a good technique, which is if you make a bed for your planer. So let's say we could run into a couple things. You've got a board that's this wide and a jointer that's this wide, and you want to flatten a face, and it's got a twist in it. If all you do is send that board through the planer, you're probably going to get the twist nice and smooth, but you're not going to get the board flat. So you make a sled, the board goes on the sled, and then if it's got a twist, that corner and this corner are touching, maybe, and these two corners are rocking. And if the total rock is a 1/4 inch, you put an 1/8 inch shim under this corner, an 1/8 inch shim under that corner, and hot glue them in place or something. Then you send that whole thing, the sled, the shims, and the board through the planer as one unit. And that will allow the planer to flatten that top face. Once the top is flat, then you can eliminate the shims, flip it over, and go from there. So that's a good approach to flatten in general and flatten stuff that's wider than what you can do on your jointer. Then he says, I can also get the sides done by clamping the piece to a board, like plywood, with a straight edge, and then run it through a table saw. Yep. So he's straight lining, using a piece of scrap to then straight line the edges on a table saw. So these are, in the absence of a jointer, that process with a planer, straight lining on a table saw are alternative ways to flatten stock, which is where we started at the top of this whole thing. Couple things. Again, I'm going to thank you to Typon for sponsoring the live streams. 2, if you scroll down, I'm just going to do that a little bit to make sure I'm right. If you scroll down a little bit on the page, there's a banner, Ultimate Guide to Wood Species, and I talked about this at the beginning, so I'm not going to beat it up again. Bottom line, this is a really comprehensive PDF about the stuff we work with every day. It explains sheet goods and how they're graded. It explains hardwood and how it's graded. It provides working characteristics of a huge variety of materials. So click on that, download now, and have a look at that PDF. It's really, I think it's 55 pages of information, really good information. Gary Coyne did a really good job on that. And then the other thing I will repeat here is a week from today, I'm teaching in Sioux Falls. So I'm not teaching on Thursday, I'm teaching Friday and Saturday, which I believe then is the 17th and 18th of February. I'm teaching at Stan Houston Equipment in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So I'm doing 2 sessions on Friday, 2 sessions on Saturday. If you have questions about that, the store is running and managing the whole thing. Don't contact me, contact the store, but it's free. The whole event is free. It's a woodworking show in Sioux Falls. So Google the store location. Vendors will be there. They'll be doing tool demos. And then, like I said, I'm teaching a couple classes a day for 2 days. All right, Kenneth says, when you're preparing boards for a glue up, you first joint the flat edge, then joint the thin edge. Take the board to the table saw and cut the board to get a parallel edge. The question, can you then take the saw edge to the jointer and joint that edge? I got to reread it here because I don't get the thin edge reference. When you are preparing boards for a glue up, you first joint the flat edge, then joint the thin edge. Take the board to the table saw, cut the board to get a parallel edge. Well, let's eliminate the first part that I don't understand. The question being, can you joint the table saw and edge? Yes, you need to joint the table saw and edge. So jointer, mine is right there, table saw, mine is right there, have a very symbiotic relationship. And they work together all the time. So in the perfect world, you are jointing an edge to make it straight. That is your reference edge. That edge goes against the fence of your table saw. You make your rip to width plus a little bit, generally a 1/16 of an inch. That board goes back to the jointer and you joint the saw and edge. And that doesn't matter if you're doing a glue up or you're just prepping boards. You don't want to leave those table saw marks on the edge of your board. So you joint, rip, joint is why, if you're creating a work triangle in your shop, you want the jointer and the table saw to be close to each other so you don't wear out the floor in between them, because you go back and forth between the two all the time. Gerald says, I'm starting to get more serious about my woodworking hobby. Which would you suggest to get first, a biscuit joiner or a domino jig? Oh, domino. Boy, was that off key. Well, yes, because the problem with this is price, really. I mean, if budget isn't a consideration, I like the domino more than a biscuit joiner because dominoes are longer. Dominoes more replicate what we get from a mortise and tenon joint, which is way more penetration into the mating piece. Biscuits work great for aligning material. They add some strength to a joint. They don't add the strength that I would build a chair with dominoes as joints any day of the week. I would be hesitant to do that with a biscuit joiner. So over the long haul, the domino is going to do more for you than a biscuit joiner will, but it's a lot more money. Paul says, I've got a nice 7-foot piece of live edge walnut, 2 inches thick. I'd like to make a simple block C-shaped side table to tuck under, hang over a sofa arm. I'd like to miter the joint so that the grain waterfalls from tabletop to vertical. Will a 45-degree miter be strong enough, or do I need to reinforce the joint with a spline or a through butterfly? Yeah, anytime I'm doing a waterfall, I always put reinforcement in there. So we could go back to the domino questions. Dominoes are great for reinforcing waterfall joints. Great way to go. But yeah, I would definitely reinforce the joint. The end grain miter alone would not be enough. Jim says, when building cabinets, and I really enjoyed your video class on premium cabinet making, thank you. What is the best way to determine how much plywood to purchase? Is there a formula? I've been drawing my carcass boards and shelves on graph paper. Although tedious, it works. Is there an easier way? So yeah, I use software. I got to think. Bridgewood is the software company. Cutlist is the software. So what happens with this is what you're looking for here is the category is called optimization software. So it's pretty cool. Once you figure out the parts for your cabinet, then I go to the software and I say, whatever, I need 4 case sides, 3/4 by 23 1/4 by 32. I need 2. You fill out a spreadsheet with all your part sizes. When you press the layout button, it will put those onto a 4x8 sheet, and it'll tell you exactly how many you need. And it's cool because with the software I have with Cutlist, I can tell it, like if I'm working with melamine, there's no face grain. So then you can tell it it's okay to turn the pieces to optimize the yield. If I'm working with a grained plywood or MDF, face grained, then you don't want to do that. So you tell it not to do that. And so there's just a lot of parameters you can put in there to further optimize your optimization. So optimization software, sorry, I got a feather in my throat, creating a tickle. Okay, so optimization software is a category. And then, like I said, the specific one I use, Bridgewood Design is the company, the mothership, and then Cutlist is the software I'm using. Han says, based on your experience, what do you consider the best table saw under $1,000? Sorry, I don't, this is another tool question I can't really answer, man, because I haven't looked at the field. I will say that really anytime anybody says to me, what table saw should I get? I say a saw stop. So I realize they're expensive. They are very, 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 very good table saws, and they have brake technology. So having that brake technology on your table saw is a wonderful thing. And then if you simply do not want to get a saw stop, then I can't help you with the rest of the question because I just haven't looked at the category of any price point of table saws since 15 years ago, 18 years ago, when I was working for American Woodworker magazine and did tool tests, and that information would not be valid today because the market has changed so much. So sorry, but I don't know. Tom says, how to get legs that have compound, which I don't know what that means. So Tom, if you're watching and you can expound a little on what you're looking for, that would help me. Jeremy says, do you have a crosscut sled? I'm about to build one and would like to see useful features to add and maybe a good working depth. So I do. I can show you it. Mine is very simple. It's kind of like a miter gauge on steroids. It's got a single bar on it. So this rides in one miter gauge slot like this. The fence is away from me. The panel I'm cutting is here. And then I'm pushing this whole thing past the blade. So when I use this, I'm trapping the material here to here and cutting. If you're looking for a sled that's got double miter gauge bars, you know, and we're straddling the blade, then I can't help you. I don't have that style. I can tell you I really like these bars. This is an Incra product. It's aluminum. And then there and there and there are wedges. So this is like it slips into my 3/4 inch table saw miter slot. Then from above, the reason these holes are here is I can put an Allen wrench in there and tighten that wedge, and I can fine tune the fit between that bar and my miter gauge slot. So that takes any slop out of it. Very, very simple, works for me. But I know there's like 11 billion different design ideas out there. Tori says, want to begin using hand planes. What would be the first couple of plans I should invest in? Planes, maybe you mean, as an absolute beginner. Unfortunately, I'm not a great hand tool kind of a guy. So I don't know. I think Mark Spagnolo, who's Wood Whisperer, Mark is more of a hand tool person than I am. And Mark's got a book called Hybrid Woodworking, where a little bit of hand tool stuff, a little bit of power tool stuff, and kind of how they play nice together. So his book might be worth a look. And then also just his website, his YouTube channel, he might have a good reference for you. Bottom line, you need to find somebody who's a way better hand tool person than I am. The only thing I can say is my go-to hand plane, as it were, is this Lee Nielsen block plane. It's a Lee Nielsen 102. And the engraving on there, isn't that beautiful? So I had that done after I got the plane. But this block plane I use a lot. Putting chamfers on material, maybe if I'm cleaning up a little bit of end grain. But in the general category of having a jack plane, a bench plane, I just don't know much about those. So Scott says, have the guy looking at repairing the antique furniture look up Thomas Johnson Furniture Restorer. He's amazing. So there you go. There's a lead on furniture restoration. Thanks, Scott. Alan says, do you ever use your hand-operated drill press on your back wall? Can you give us some history since it must be an antique? Yeah, so, oh, it's messy there, but I'll point you in that direction anyway. So many years ago, I was in a woodcraft store. I was teaching at the woodcraft store in Minnesota all the time. And they had a drill press like this mounted in the store. And I loved it. Now, look at the mechanics of this thing. So when I turn this, this is geared to this, and that of course turns the chuck. Now with this one, this mechanism is also making this kicker on top engage with a gear up here. So every time I do this, that kicker engages, turns this, which makes the chuck go down. So it's automatically advancing every time I do this. So once I saw a similar drill press in the store, I fell in love with the concept and I had to have one of these. So I live in a rural area. A bunch of years ago, I went to a farm auction and this drill press was on auction and it would not turn. The handle wouldn't crank. One of the things I liked about it, prior to that, I had seen other drill presses, drill press eye, whatever, that I didn't buy because they were missing parts. And I thought, well, like if the chuck is gone or the handle is gone or whatever, where am I ever going to find that kind of thing? So what I liked about this one is that everything was there. There's a big old 20-penny nail holding this part together. I kind of like that, but everything is functional. Everything is here. So when I saw it at the auction, like I said, it wouldn't turn at all. I bought it for $50. I think I was the only one that bid on it, so I probably could have got it for less, but I paid $50 for it. It was all I could do to pick it up and get it in the truck and take it home. It's stupid heavy. The first thing I did is power wash it. And the reason it wouldn't turn was that somebody had greased it a lot. So over time, dust got in there with the grease, maybe sawdust was in there with the grease. So it filled all the cogs on the gears. And that's what was preventing it from turning, is the teeth couldn't, the positive tooth couldn't go into the negative of the gear, and that's why it wouldn't turn. So do I use it? Like, I don't, because I own a really good drill press. But every once in a while, I'll reset this baby. Every once in a while, I do a class of kids in here. And one of the things we do is do a birdhouse, and the birdhouse has a 1-inch hole in it. And I have them drill the hole on that. And they complain every step of the way, but in a very good-natured way. You know, they recognize a cordless drill or the drill press would make that hole in about a billionth of a second. So they good-naturedly complain all the time. But they turn the crank, the Forstner bit goes round and round and down, and it drills the hole in the cedar. So I love it just, as a talking point. And I'm, like I said, very intrigued by the mechanics of that whole thing, and the fact that it goes round and round and the kicker brings it, advances the quill. It's really cool. Brilliant. So post drill or blacksmith drill, I believe, is what it's actually called. I don't, of all things, if you're a Roadrunner person, it's an Acme drill. Acme post drill. I can't find anything. There's no number on it or anything that lets me nail down how old it is. They're pretty prevalent though, mid 1800s. So it is, what's the math? 150 or more years old, maybe. All right, Don says, I acquired several walnut logs ranging from 4 inches to 10 inches in diameter. I left the bark on, and they're outdoors under a carport. My question is, should I remove the bark right away or leave it on until I'm ready to slice it? So always leave the bark on. That's a skin, and that's going to slow down the rate at which it can dry. So if it's on, leave it on. I did apply wood sealer to the pieces when I first received it. That's good. Paint the ends. Once it's sliced, does the 1 year per inch apply for drying time? Yep. So you'll be surprised. The 4-inch stuff is pretty small. The 10-inch stuff, depending on how long the logs are, you'll be surprised at how wet it can still be inside the log as you start slicing it. So yeah, figure a year per inch of thickness to air dry. Jerome says, on the Titebond glue bottle, I have a habit of leaving it open for a few minutes when I spread the glue. The glue tends to flow back into the bottom more quickly. Just got to remember to shut the tip. It can still get messy, but not as bad. Of course, if you forget to close the bottle, you're setting up the entire bottle, which is true. Dries by, yellow glue dries by evaporation. So if air can get in and out, it's going to evaporate. I really like this program, so I've learned a lot. Thanks for that, Jerome. Michael asks, have you ever tried Fusion 360 for designing cabinets? No, I'm not there at all. So a bunch of years ago, I launched into SketchUp, and that is what I do all my design work on. When I started doing CNC stuff, VCarve Pro was the companion software for CNC stuff. I recognize that Fusion 360 offers more. Fusion 360 is, I think, kind of a mix of SketchUp and VCarve, but it's not something I've ever dabbled in at all. Barbara says, favorite joint for doing a box joint for drawer. Favorite joint for doing box. Got it. Never mind. Sorry. Favorite joint for doing box for drawer. Lock rabbets. They are kick butt. We've got a video. So we've got a category of videos on the site called post-haste videos. One of those, post-haste projects, one of those is making a lock rabbit. If you're using 1/2-inch material, which I commonly do, 1/2-inch sheet stock, 1/2-inch material, use a 1/4-inch slot cutter. One setup on the router table does both halves of the joint, and it makes the 1/4-inch groove for the drawer bottom. Crazy cool. Great way to make a box. Greg says, SawStop makes a contractor size saw. They do. If this is back to the $1,000 question, I don't think it's under $1,000, which is what that question was asking. Jerome says, after running my fingers into a table saw blade twice and dado head once, I now own a SawStop. A break is cheaper than the ER visit. Same. It's like I said, I know the saws are expensive. The good news is they're crazy good quality saws, in addition to having the brake technology. And I had one table saw accident when I was 17, so 45 years ago. I'd like to never do that again. So I'm a big advocate of SawStop. Alan says he's got a similar drill press in his shop that was his grandfather's. Keith says when he was looking for a benchtop drill press, look for the things I mentioned, but then also a quill stop so you could drill multiple holes the same depth. Yep. Michael says, I always hate this question because I'm a bad video person. Michael's question is, that's an awesome workbench you're leaning against. Got plans? And I'll say the same thing. This question comes up pretty frequently. When I built this, it's a 4x8 bench. And I says to myself, I'm very lucky I've got a 3,200 square foot shop. And I love my 4x8 workbench. And I thought, how many people can fit a 4x8 workbench in their shop? So I did not draw this on SketchUp. I built it on the fly as I went, figuring out as I went, and I love it. Since then, probably, 5 years ago, many people have asked if I have plans. So I guess more people can fit a 4x8 than I would have ever thought. So my stock answer, which is still yet to happen, is when I have nothing else to do, I'm going to take measurements off of this and sit here with my laptop and draw it in SketchUp. But that hasn't happened in the time I've had the bench. So don't hold your breath. Back to Spagnolo. He just did a 4x8 bench in his shop. He's probably producing plans for his. So maybe have a look at his channel too and see if he's got something for you. This won't happen in the immediate future. Kim says, I'm planning built-in bookshelves above some cabinets. My shelf span will be 24 inches to lessen chance of sag. I don't want to add a back, would rather connect the vertical sides directly to the wall. What is the best way to do this? Do you have any resources to direct me? Tanks. I am learning so much from you. Possibly meant thanks, but I kind of like tanks. Shelf span 24. Don't want to add back. Would rather connect the vertical sides directly to the wall. Well, you got to have something. Well, it's kind of interesting, like bookshelves above some cabinets. So if those sides aren't really load bearing, if the sides are sitting on a set of cabinets, I wonder if one could, basically what you're trying to do is not carry the load of the books that you're putting on there. You are just trying to prevent those verticals from falling off the wall. So I don't know for sure, but it's possible you could drill a pocket hole in the sides and then drive screws through the pocket holes into anchors in the wall and then plug the pocket holes. I'm not sure, visually, if it's above cabinets, are you going to see those pocket hole plugs and that's not tripping your trigger that you're going to have that? You could, what might be cleaner would be if you made it's our glare factor. So if you had your vertical, and then on the back of it, is that working? On the back of it, put like a 1x2. So you're basically making a T. And you could drive screws through the back of the 1x2 into the vertical, and then you could put screws through the face of the 1x2 into anchors in the wall. And I would do this over pocket holes. You could make those pretty discreet. If you just had a little 3/4 inch cantilever out here, that would be enough to carry a screw. And then you wouldn't need a back on the cabinet. I think that would work pretty well. Michael says you can build a PAULK, P-A-U-L-K, workbench in any dimension, basically a torsion panel with storage underneath instead of on the tabletop. Okay. All right, well, we're sneaking up on the witching hour, which is 5 bells. And then again, kind of our 3 things I keep hitting on here. Thank you, Titebond, for doing this. 2, get your wood guide. Get your wood guide here. Get your wood guide. Scroll down a little bit where it says Ultimate Wood Guide. Click there. Really great comprehensive packet about the stuff that we work with every time we're in the shop. 3, if you're close to scenic Sioux Falls, South Dakota, alliteration, a week from now, the 17th and 18th of February, I'm teaching at Stand Houston Equipment in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, all day Friday, all day Saturday. James says, I have a benchtop router table and was thinking about upgrading, was wondering about a full-size router table or workbench insert router. Yeah, it depends. I mean, given the floor space, separate tools, I think, are always better, because then you're not like, you're tying up space on your workbench and then suddenly you need the workbench, but you also need the router table set up or whatever. So yeah, if you've got the space to do a standalone full-size router table, that would be good. Kim says, okay, tanks, sounds good, and she'll work on that. That, my young friends, will clear us on this week. Now, going into next month, watch your emails. In March, Jimmy DeResta is going to be back. We are not, now I got to think a second. We're going to do a live with him. It is not going to be on a Thursday. It is not going to be at 4 because we're shooting video all day. So we're going to shoot video all day. Jim and I will go eat. Then we'll come back. Then we'll do the live stream. So it's going to be different bat time, different bat station, different bat day. It's probably going to be on a Wednesday. So watch for that Duresta info. And he was a blast to have in the shop. I can't wait to get him back. All right. That is all I know. So thank God that we're done because my brain is done. So I will see you when I look at you. Shut us down, Max.